It is already June 16th, 2025. Brendan, happy Father's Day again, 2 days in a row. Happy Father's
Happy
Day.
Father's Day to all the fathers out there that we miss, and all the mothers that are fathers, and all the fathers that are mothers.
That's
We
right,
love
man.
y'all.
Hey, we love our parents and grandparents and all the people that came before us. Absolutely, man. Great show in store for you today. I love Mondays. We got a lot to cover. SEC versus ACC. We're going to have a lot of fun. And who better than one of the great wordsmiths and the best writers in the country? Just all around good man. Great father of two Gators, by the way, Kevin Scarbinsky in the corners just north of Birmingham via Potts Camp, Pennsylvania. Anyway, we're going to talk a lot of SEC and ACC. We got a lot to fight for, a lot to cover. Hey, do us a favor. Take a picture with your phone of the QR code. And man, we really appreciate all of you watching and sharing the show, getting great numbers of views and shares and impressions and all. Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, 7 channels live simultaneously at the same darn time. And a channel with 8 shows on there. And that man right there in the button-down shirt, always dressed as a pro. Brendan Martin is the EP on all this stuff, making it happen. And so no further delays. First man up, and that batter in the box, Kevin Scarbinsky. And Kevin, first off, thanks for taking time out of your Monday morning to share with us and our audience. You're part of this team, this family we're building here. And I got to say, I watched episode 4 yesterday. We were up early. I don't know. It was on SEC Network. Saturdays Down South. Remember the 8-part episode they did in 2019? You can't, every time you watch it, you pick up on new stuff. And I'm thinking about in the 70s, what ABC college football did with obviously Keith Jackson, who's from Carrollton, Georgia, by the way, went and joined the Marine Corps on the GI Bill. And when he got out, he went to college at Washington State University. And then was it Andy Zadaris was the director or producer for ABC Sports that started getting it like real up close and personal. But that's what hooked you, me, Brendan, everybody watching on college football, isn't it? You're muted.
Oh, you're muted, Kevin. There you go.
It always helps if you turn the microphone on.
Yes.
It is Monday. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Hi, Kevin.
Hope everyone had a good Father's Day.
Great day.
Happy Father's Day to you, sir.
Thank you.
You hear from the Gators?
Off to a great start. They're here. They're here for at least a few more weeks.
Yeah.
Before it's time to head back to school. So I'm trying to enjoy that time as much as possible. I think, though, Rob, to your question, a lot the way college football and college sports have gone, I think a lot of people would like to go back to those days of maybe few. I was going to say fewer games on television. I don't know how many fans, though, would like it where you had one game a week or 2 or 3 games a week, and you couldn't see your favorite team every single Saturday if you couldn't be there in person. You couldn't watch on television. I don't think a lot of people would really like to go back to those days where it was really hard to see your favorite team. Now, it did seem to make each game more special. You know, back when every game matters was a thing in college football. I'm not sure that's going to be the case going forward the more we expand the playoff, but that's another subject we can discuss.
Well, one thing for sure, college football was a regional game in the 70s. And when you went to a stadium, it was such a big deal because it was bigger than life, the buildup, and you get there and you're like, wow. I remember the 1974 Auburn, Georgia game. I took a little pocket mirror I had. We used to do it in class. We'd get the sun to reflect, and we would light people's notebook paper on fire and stuff.
Oh
and I was going to try to blind the Georgia quarterback, and my dad said, boy, they catch you with that mirror, you'll be under the jail. But, I mean, the games are so big. Kevin, you get to write, and you're one of the best writers out there. I see your stuff on Twitter all the time. Right now, and Will Vandervort's going to join us in the second half from the Clemson Insider. Talk SEC, ACC. Had a great visit with him Friday to get him on the show. Right now, there's like I say, there's a lot to fight for. And somebody sent me a reel off Instagram this morning of a Tennessee recruit who's a 5-star wide receiver commitment to LSU. And they show just, it's crazy. And I said, excuse me while I throw up. I long for the days when a kid was grateful that he has a scholarship offer and a chance at an education. As crazy as it sounds, the fans are getting to the point where there's going to be a walkout at a game or two this in the coming years. They're just going to walk out. It's going to be an organized protest. But I do think we're bottoming out and about to go back to the good old days. And yeah, he's back, the bag man.
I wonder about that. I wonder what it really would take for fans to stay away from the stadium, turn off the television, because, everyone expresses a lot of frustration with what college athletics has become. But we're still watching. Look at the ratings.
Yeah.
Look at attendance. And so I know there have been some issues with attendance. It's dropped slightly over the years here and there, and athletic departments have done their best to try to create more experiential days at the ballpark, if you will, and created spaces where people could mingle, because this is the real danger to me. They don't have to hook us. We got, as you said, Rob, earlier, we were hooked on college football for a long time ago. But my son's generation, for example, they're in their early 20s. They're not as wrapped up in college sports in general as I was when I was their age. And so I'm concerned about that younger generation where it's not a thing where you have to go to a game or you have to watch a game as much. It doesn't seem to mean as much, despite the SEC slogan, to younger people. And I think that is a definite concern. I've been to a couple of years ago, my nephew, he got married the day of the Alabama-Tennessee football game.
Ugh.
And I remember jokingly saying to my wife, what were they thinking? And of course I got a good scolding for that. I said, listen, I'm not saying I'm not going. And of course I went to the wedding. It's my nephew, but I've seen more of that where, that was taboo not that long ago.
You have to understand, Kevin, I grew up in a world where everything was scheduled on sports. Everything. My father's life was our life, and so we were scheduled, as you all know, is that people, and then when I wouldn't go work in sports later in life, people say, well, what's your schedule like? I said, yeah, nights, holidays, and weekends when there's games on. Yeah, that's when we are, and that's always during all that time. My question is, moreover, how much do you think gambling has played in keeping people interested, and especially the younger people, because they're a lot more involved in FanDuel and all this other stuff? What do you guys think about that?
Big time.
Well, that's it's not my favorite subject, because that's just never something I've ever been interested in.
Me either.
First of all, if you grow up as a journalist, you're not making the big money.
Never.
So you're not wasting your money on whether Florida is going to beat Georgia or Auburn's going to beat Alabama. Nope. Because you also know, especially the more you pay attention, the more you cover it, the closer you are to it, crazy things happen. There are no sure things in sports. That's one of the reasons we love them.
Yeah.
Because Coastal Carolina can be one game away now from the College World Series championship series.
Cinderella.
Who would have predicted that? Who would have predicted that when 13 SEC teams got into the field? So
gambling, we see March Madness every year too.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that draws us to March Madness, though,
Absolutely.
is those early round upsets. But the big boys usually end up the last one standing, as we saw this year. So, but I wonder if it weren't for prop betting and live betting and look, and I am functionally illiterate when it comes to sports betting or betting in general. And so it is, but there's no doubt it's a huge part of the audience. It's a huge part of the audience.
Yeah, it is. And my kids' generation, they're betting the coin toss, if they're going to wear a specialty jersey if they're going to change before kickoff, they're betting the halftime. They bet on everything. Okay.
Well, there's a website now where you can bet on anything at all. You can, if you make the bet, then someone's going to take that action. It's like hanging out with your boys. I got 20. That homeboy's not going to drink that beer. I'll take that action. I mean, that's where we're at. When we have a website that you can bet on that. You put a bet up there, and anyone can take action on it.
There's no state in America per capita, Kevin and Brendan, that people bet like the state of Alabama. When I was in college, we had 3 bookies in the fraternity house.
Wow.
And I mean, it was serious at Auburn. My girlfriend in college used to say, I'll bet you you can't go 5 minutes when we get over to the house at lunch without talking about football. I was like, I'm not even going to try.
Yeah, Rob, I can remember when I started in the business back in the mid 80s here in Birmingham. And it was almost an urban myth at the time, but it was actually true. There were stories written that Birmingham was the center of illegal gambling on college football. That more money was bet on college football illegally at the time, obviously, in Birmingham than anywhere else in the country. And which has been borne out year after year when Birmingham is number 1 in ESPN's college football ratings for metro areas. So people love the sport here, but what do they love it for? What do they love about it? And I think that has definitely shifted.
Well, what really with me, the cool part about it is this show. I mean, getting all these 16 fan bases, this is what makes it so much fun. Hell, Kevin, we were reading you in college. So, I mean, for a long, you were, and you still are, putting out great stuff. But I think the interest in college football is with a lot of the people. I know my kids, they stay the full 60. I mean, I've always said that. It's in their DNA. But I do think the interest, the kids, it's getting to see your friends again. Whatever it takes to get you back on campus, you better strengthen that. Want to ask you now, Roman Harper is going to be here tonight in Memphis to speak at the Spring Touchdown Club, the Memphis Touchdown Club Spring Speaker Series, and love to have Roman on this show. Looking forward to getting to see him. But you watch him and Cole, their show, Read and React. You wake up in Birmingham, they're on Cole and Cube. I mean, Mac and Cube. The interest, and you go in Gainesville, you got Shane Matthews on in the morning, you got the Buddy Martin show, and there's just, I don't think we can get enough of it. I want to ask you some questions now about the SEC. The magazines are out. I've got Lindy's, I've got Athlon's. You're looking at the first team all-conference quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier, a 5th-year senior. Second team, Arch Manning. I think he'll stay the whole time in college as long as he can. He made a promise with his grandfather, Elijah Archibald Manning from Drew, Mississippi, which is in the Delta on Highway 49, about 25 minutes south of the farm I have down there in Lambert I get to hunt on for life, that he would never touch NIL. He doesn't get to spend any of that money till he's officially the starter at the University of Texas. And the third team quarterback is Lenora Sellers. See right there? That's cause for debate, isn't it?
Yeah, look, this is another year where we don't know who's going to step up at the quarterback position. Mm-hmm. There are fewer established quarterbacks. Look, DJ Lagway did some spectacular things. So did Lenora Sellers. Arch Manning in, stand-in duty when Quinn Ewers got hurt, did some spectacular things. But we don't have those guys like Garrett Nussmeier, and even Garrett Nussmeier. Garrett Nussmeier's been good. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Would we say he's been great?
No.
He's not Joe Burrow, right? But Joe Burrow wasn't Joe Burrow until his last year.
Yes.
So that's a position that normally takes time to grow and develop. And the problem now is you don't have the same core of players usually around you, whether it's the offensive line to protect you, the skill players to get open. You don't have that same core. You're not working with that same core for a very long period of time. You might be working with them for 1 year.
Yeah.
Because of the coming and goings through the transfer portal. And I think that's another problem that I've heard from college football fans is it's hard to get to know the players and care about the players when I feel like they're mercenaries. They are like professional athletes now. They are quasi-professional athletes in a lot of cases, that they're there not for the love of the school, but the love of the bag.
Yeah,
they
I'm
are.
going to say here's Perry Mason. Love this guy. He's a citrus farmer. I'm thinking of rice and cotton farmers up here. He's citrus farmer down in Central Florida. I'm not sure if he's Sebring or Avon Park, whatever. Love him though. Big Gator. No DJ Lagway. You're right. You talk about a story of a guy that's had multiple opportunities. He could have left. He is all Gator. I think if you shook his hand, it would feel like alligator skin. I think he is that into Florida, and he's making everybody around him work their ass off to play better. He's not even on this list. That I'll tell you right now. You say Arch Manning, Garrett Nussmeier, experience with Nussmeier. I would put DJ Lagway. That he'd be in my top 3. And I'm not saying that to placate people, but what did he do last year? He elevated Florida to win 4 of their last 5 games. I mean, he wasn't the only one, but he's an alpha male, no beta at all.
And that's why I've been saying, and I said it on my podcast on Friday, that this is a great opportunity for Auburn to finally beat either Alabama or Georgia, both of which those streaks have lasted far too long in the history of Auburn football. You should not lose to Alabama 5 straight years, and you certainly shouldn't lose to Georgia 8 straight years.
Yeah.
I don't care how good Georgia is, and they've been very good. I don't care how good Alabama is, and they've been very good. But this year, Alabama doesn't have a proven quarterback. We don't know how good Ty Simpson is going to be. Is he going to be Mac Jones? Maybe, but we don't know that. And how good is the Georgia when the Georgia quarterback came in and he had to come in the SEC championship game? He kind of rallied the troops. They rallied around him. He showed some toughness, but when he had time to prepare for the playoff, didn't play so well.
Yeah. Well, that's the point. And here's Carson Beck. He's down at Miami. You had a quarterback last year, Cam Ward, who was the number 1 pick in the draft. Really good. But they've lost a lot of guys. And Miami gave up 30 or more points in 5 of their 8 ACC games last year. But I'm going to tell you, you look at DJ Lagway in the pocket, he's a big, strong, physical kid, but he's also investing his NIL money. I think he's involved with softball. I'm going to tell you one thing. I will say this. Arch, Garrett Nussmeier, DJ Lagway, I think people need to pause for – these are good kids. I say because I have 4 of them, but they're good. I think they're just good people. And I think they love where they are. So, Kevin, thinking about this, you look at offense, defense. Alabama's offensive line is thought to be maybe the best coming back in the SEC. Caden Proctor, Cole Kubelik talked about it last week. 2 springs in a row, he has not been in practice, yet he's projected as the best offensive lineman. How are you going to do that missing all those reps? And I just wonder, remember we could reel off offensive line studs at every school? People nowadays, they're like on the side of a milk carton. You don't even know who they are.
Well,
for the most part.
Again, that's because they're coming and going in the transfer portal.
That's right.
To a great degree. You've talked about the experience that Auburn's offensive line has this year. One of the reasons I think that you're optimistic about what's possible, at least at Auburn, but they brought in the left tackle from Virginia Tech, for example. So these guys they're not working together as units for long periods of time, and that's to the detriment of the game. It's to the detriment of development, cohesion, chemistry, whatever you want to call it. It's harder to develop that when guys are coming and going.
Yeah.
Well, and we've heard some coaches allude to potentially the athlete the game not being as good because of the cohesion, which you just mentioned, Kevin, but also the overall, I'd want to of the athletes not there. The carrot's a little closer to the cart now. Do they really want to push that hard? Is college the pinnacle now? They're getting paid. They can go. They don't have to play professional. They go be set up for life. So are we gonna? I've just talked privately to some coaches, and they're like, yeah, well, we're starting to see some of these players, these 3rd and 4th, looks on guys that come in. They're just not as talented because they don't have that drive to be there. Do you guys think that would be a case for people to start walking out on this game when the product starts not getting as good? in the sense of we see athletes dropping off in some way because they just don't have the want to?
Kevin, answer that one, and I'll give you my answer. I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, I've heard people make the argument, why should I watch if college football is going to be professional football light? Yeah. Why should I watch college football? Because we already have an NFL. We already have the best players in the world who are motivated to some degree, and it's different for every individual, by money, because this is their livelihood. They can't do it forever because of the risk of injury, and your physical skills will diminish over time. So if I can watch that, and that is governed by common sense rules, one free agency period a year, they have a trade debt period, their playoff system is consistent. Why would I watch college football with all the chaos? And it's not as good a product just as terms of talent on the field. And you can't argue against that. But the thing that always drew people into college football, I thought, was the feeling that you got when you went to Jordan-Hare Stadium, or you went to the Swamp, or you went to Neyland Stadium, wherever it might be. Even if you weren't, even if you were neutral, even if you weren't waving a flag or wearing school colors, and as a journalist, you're not doing those things. You're there as an observer, but you still get that feeling. You can't, if you're a human being, and you didn't get chills on December 2nd, 1989, when Alabama walked into Jordan-Hare Stadium for the very first time, the very last SEC team to finally play a game at Auburn. And that was, I don't know that I'll ever experience. I've been fortunate. We've all been fortunate in what we do, being at special places on special occasions.
Yeah.
Like Game 7 of the 92 NLCS, when Francisco Cabrera swung and Sid Bream slid and Fulton County Stadium went absolutely insane. I get chills just thinking about watching from there.
Yeah.
Being there. And so the same thing with these special games. And my concern, and I think the concerns of the people who run the sports, should be losing that feeling, because that feeling is what separates college football from professional football.
Yeah, I will say this too, and Will Vandervort will be on with us in a minute from the Clemson Insider. When I go to a game, I was there December 2nd, 1989, and I set my tickets. I gave my parents the two I had on the 50 on row 7, and my dad found out what he could have sold those for, and he goes, "Boy, I'd have sold those things and gone over to Mama Goldberg's and got a pitcher of beer with your mother. Why didn't you tell me that?" But we were all there. I sat in the Auburn players' parents section with my friend Kirby from Memphis. They flew down, and I will tell you this, that was unbelievable. I didn't go to bed till 7 o'clock Sunday morning when I got in the Rock 103 van to get back over to Columbus because I had to work that afternoon. But it took years I'd never have gotten over that. It was so cool. Thinking about these big games, I do think this. I've heard, and I go back in the last 50, 60 years, how many times, Wall Street is dead. The American dream is over. Stock market falls apart. And here we go. We just the Dow was back in the 70s, man, the Dow was less than 1,000, went down 47 points, 73 and 74. The world's coming to an end. Now the Dow's over 40,000. What's the price of gold? Watching this stuff play out is fascinating. And the reason I wanted to get Will on here today, and he'll be with us momentarily.
He's here, Rob.
Okay,
I keep chatting you. You don't pay attention to me.
Sorry, it's not coming through. I'm sorry. I didn't see it.
It is. I think you just got the wrong screen up, but I love you.
Yeah, sorry about that. But let's bring in.
Do that, Rob.
He's on a roll.
He's on a roll today. It's Monday. When his camera starts shaking a lot, Rob is really going hard.
I'm drinking it. I'm drinking that.
That's when, hey, Audrey, just take down the coffee.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Well, I'm drinking Shadrack's pecan, Southern pecan coffee mixed with Jamaican Me Crazy. This stuff's really good. But Will Vandervort, the Clemson Insider, I hear you on Chuck Oliver's show a lot, and I was like, Heath Klein and Chuck so kind to hook me up with you. We had a great visit Friday. I want to talk about SEC and ACC because it's a cousin and first cousin. It's like our dads were brothers because it's the same people. And you go to Atlanta, you know what I'm talking about. Right. You on here with Kevin Scarbinsky, the Birmingham lead, longtime sports writer, Birmingham News, one of the best, and our executive producer, Brendan Martin. But let's get your take on Clemson, it's such an SEC school in so many ways. But, your take on college football right now and all the stuff happening and the way Dabo is doing it up there in the upstate.
Yeah, what do the SEC people call Clemson? That other school from that other conference that likes to be a thorn in the side to the SEC at times when they do play. I mean, it's a Clemson. If you've never been here before, it's a different place. That's the best way I can describe it. I've been all over the place covering college football for over 20 years, and I've seen a lot of great places, a lot of great venues, but nothing really compares to what this little town is. And that's the way I describe it. Dabo says little old Clemson because it is little old Clemson. Yeah. When you come to Clemson, there's only 12,000 residents in the actual city of Clemson. There's probably, maybe 10 stoplights. I mean, it's not many, and the city is all about the campus, about that university. And it's different when you realize how small it is and you compare it to other places around the country. It really takes you back when, you think about this tiny town, that has an 80,000 seat stadium sitting right in the middle of it. And, and it just kind of blows you away when you see that. And, and it kind of makes you think, okay, there's a little something different about this place than most places. And it does have an SEC feel to it. I think Clemson has always felt like, they're the redheaded stepchild of the ACC. Even though they played a big role in starting the ACC, but the conference feels like it's a it's more traditional basketball conference, and that's not Clemson is not that. And until Florida State really joined the conference back in 1992, Clemson was really the only true football school in the conference for a long period of time, and so they still have that feeling like they're just not like everybody else in this conference, and that's why they've always dominated this conference from football for the most part historically. And, it's just different, and you don't get that vibe anywhere else in the ACC, whereas Clemson compares more to SEC schools because of the way football is important. Football is a way of life in this state and in this town. And so it's just different. And, so I guess that's the best way to describe it when you're talking about Clemson and what Clemson means to the people up here and in the upstate of South Carolina.
Well, if they're the stepchild and they have 22 ACC football championships, and South Carolina, God love them, in their entire history has a co-championship of the ACC in 1969 when they were 7-4, and there are probably more Carolina fans than there are Clemson fans. But just ask a Marine, go over to Paris Island and ask a Marine straight out of 8 weeks of basic 5 of AIT, how much pride. Pain's temporary, pride's forever. Kevin Scarbinsky, jump in here. And by the way, Buddy Martin nailed it. Great point, Scarbo. Journalists should acknowledge those feelings as part of the story, even if they don't write or talk about it. Buddy Martin, hell of an endorsement from Francis Wilton Martin. I love that.
Well, Buddy knows. Buddy's been doing this longer than all of us and doing it at a very high level. Yep. And that's right. That's one of the reasons why it's a privilege and a joy to go to a football game at Clemson, for example. Because if you're used to covering the SEC as we are, Will, when you go to Clemson, as you said, it has that same feeling. To watch them run down the hill and led by Dabo. And I've known Dabo since he was a player at Alabama. Yeah. And Dabo's never – this is what people miss about Dabo, in my opinion. And not to go off on a tangent here, but he's the same person deep inside. That's why he says little old Clemson. And people say, oh, Clemson's been a national power now for some time. But that's Dabo's mentality. You have to work harder. You have to go the extra mile. Because he was certainly not born into privilege by any stretch of the imagination. He had to fight, scratch, and claw in his life, as did his family, in addition to in his career. So that's what drives him. That's what motivates him. And that's why he's an SEC guy. I mean, he's never shied from it. He's never run from it. He was great talking about it. That great run of Alabama, Clemson, playoff games, national championship games. That's why Clemson has been one of the better programs in the country. Forget by conference, in the country, because of Dabo's leadership, because of his drive, because of his approach. And that's why I chuckle every time people say, oh, Dabo's lost it, or he's a dinosaur, or he's living in the past.
Yeah.
If you think Dabo's lost it, you don't know Dabo.
Hey, dinosaurs. I thought if I'll take that any day of the week. What's his record? 180-47.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. What is winning 80% of the time is what he does. No, Dabo is very genuine. That's the best way I describe it to people. He is who you see on TV. Kevin, you just said it perfectly. That's exactly who he is and what he's like. And he does have this chip on his shoulder that motivates him. He loves it when somebody tells him he can't do anything. If you want Clemson to go away, don't tell Dabo Swinney he can't do something.
Yeah.
Because that's going to motivate him to put Clemson even a higher map. And what people need to understand about Dabo is Dabo's very competitive. Like, this guy plays noon basketball still, at 54 years old, like he's 24 years old.
Yeah.
And he takes it very serious. He talks smack. I've been involved in some of those noon basketball games, and he's really serious about it. He doesn't play around, and he's still got some moves on him. I'm gonna tell you, he's very athletic, but he plays basketball the way he coaches football. In other words, he is going to do everything he can to be the best on that day when he plays you, and he doesn't care if your name's Nick Saban. He doesn't care if you're Shane Beamer. He doesn't care who you are. His goal is to win, and he's coaching Clemson, and he wants to be the best, and he strives still to be the best coach in the country. That's what his motivation is. Dabo isn't satisfied being second best or told he's second best. That motivates him. He wants to be on the top, and he does it in a different way than everybody else, and he loves that. I mean, he plays off of that, and his team kind of, that culture and the way they play for him is the exact same way, and it's a unique thing. Been covering Dabo since he was the wide receivers coach here at Clemson. When I first started the job, he was wide receivers coach the first 5 years that I covered Clemson. And so I got to know Dabo as the wide receivers coach. And I'll be honest with you, not much has changed from that Dabo Swinney to the guy who's the head coach that's won 2 national championships at Clemson. He's the same guy as he was then. And I think Kevin said it best about who he is as a person and what drives him and how he leads his Clemson program.
Well, a great title for a book on Dabo would be "Only Thing That's Changed About Dabo Since Then Is His W-2." So that's good for him, because Ellis Johnson is normally with us on Mondays, a proud product of Winsboro, South Carolina, and the Citadel graduate, Ring of Honor. But he's on assignment today and again next Monday, but will be back with us. But he was at Alabama coaching when Dabo was there. I mean, we know the story of what he overcame. Kevin, I think this is cool. I want to break it down and kind of go back and forth. I got 2 real smart guys here, as well as Brendan, and I'm in the mix somewhere drinking coffee. But SEC versus ACC. Look, Kevin, I'm looking at Georgia Tech. The Ramblin' Wreck. Per capita, Georgia Tech has produced more millionaires than any school in the country. There's a lot of talent in Atlanta. Is the ACC starting to, look, Florida State, they've only had 2 winning seasons the last 7 years. Hard to believe, but we know what they've done there. Is the ACC starting to pick up, because those second and third team guys that used to stick around on the rosters in the SEC and other schools, well, they're now starting at SMU or Indiana or Arizona State. And then Dabo is building it through high school, and now he's got Cade Klubnik out of Austin Westlake. What do you think's happening? Is there a power shift, or is there threat to dominance of the SEC? I think there is. I mean, if you get complacent, there is.
Well, you made a very important point, is talent is thinning out. Talent is going to different places. I don't think you'll ever see, maybe Ohio State can do it. I don't know. But the way Alabama under Nick Saban was able to stockpile talent, you look back at some of the quarterback rooms they had, some of the wide receiver rooms they had, some of the running back rooms. I mean, Derrick Henry was going to leave after his first or second year because he wasn't getting enough carries, and he wasn't sure he would. And of course, he turned into a Heisman Trophy winner and an absolute dominant running back his last year. and they just rode him to a national championship in that incredible first game against Clemson in the national championship game. So that is a good thing for schools in the ACC, because look, the most of the talent still is born and raised in the Deep South, in the Sun Belt, if you want to expand it.
Yeah.
So if some of those guys now, instead of going to Alabama or Georgia, if those guys start going to Carolina or NC State, they've always been going to Clemson, or at least for a long time. But if they start going to other ACC schools, then you're going to see some of this more. You're going to see more competitive games. All you got to do is look at the Georgia Tech game last year. Mm-hmm. Georgia was very, very fortunate to get out of there with a W.
Yeah, and think about that, Will. The ACC, the schools I just mentioned, Miami's had three. I think Miami's led the ACC in recruiting rankings 3 straight years. They're rising. Talk about the conference. Fran Brown won 10 last year at Syracuse. Don't tell me about the schedule. I know people are going to rip me for that, but 10 is 10. Brent Bielema won 10 at Illinois. I mean, I just think the talent is spreading out.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I always like to say, okay, first of all, when you look at the depth of a conference, I should say, the SEC is far beyond better than anybody. I'll admit that. I think anybody that watches college football understands that. When you look at, how many teams in the middle of the SEC can probably go to other conferences and compete, there's no doubt in my mind on that. And I always kind of laugh because everybody tries to talk about how strong the Big Ten is. And I'm like, is it really? Outside of Ohio State, who's won it, how many times they've won the Big Ten in the last 15 years? They've won as many times as Alabama almost, right? Has won the SEC. Outside of Alabama, and you throw in a Michigan here or there and Penn State, after those 3, I don't think the Big Ten is as good as everybody says it is. I mean, go look at the records. It's no different than the ACC. I think, when you got the ACC, you got Clemson, who's been on this run now for a while. Before Clemson, it was Florida State, and then Florida State's been here and there. They haven't been good the last few years. Yes, we know that. But, prior to that, when Jimbo was there, they were really good, and they competed every year. They were in that top 10 every year. And Virginia Tech, I would say, is a football program. And then that's it. That's it with the Atlantic Coast Conference. Those are the teams that compete generally in football, and then everybody else kind of falls into place. Sounds like the Big Ten doesn't to me. Now, is the ACC getting better? Yes. Have they made a declaration where, give Commissioner Jim Phillips credit? He came in and said enough is enough. Basketball is not the breadwinner in this world of college athletics. It's football, and if you don't start competing in football, you're going to fall behind. Our conference is going to fall behind. We got to do something about this, which is why they've changed a lot of the revenue sharing. How now it's the teams that are putting the money in to their athletic departments are going to be rewarded with that revenue sharing. And obviously Clemson is leading the way with that because of the amount of concentration Clemson puts into football, which allows them to be at the top and around not just in the ACC, but the country. And you're seeing Florida State make that investment, things they've done lately. Even smaller schools like Boston College have made a strong investment trying to get better in football, knowing that this is where the conference wants to go. So it's still got a long way to go. It's got a long way to go. It's nowhere near going to be where the SEC is. But I think it's better than the Big 12. I think as when you put it head-to-head and you go the depth and the teams, I think the ACC's got better teams overall than the Big 12 does. And then I think it's right there competitive with the Big 10 more than people think. Because, again, the Big 10 is a 3-horse race, and it has been for decades. And then Penn State can't get over the top. Even last year, they couldn't get over the top, right? And so that's kind of where it is. And then you got the SEC. Yeah, Alabama's won a lot of championships. We know that under Nick Saban. But now that Nick's gone, I think the SEC's up for grabs. And I think you're going to start seeing different teams every year start to win in this conference and actually compete more at a higher level than you saw when Alabama was going through its dominance.
I'm going to throw some numbers out here for both of y'all and Brendan to decipher. November 2nd, 1995. I remember that Thursday night game very well. Florida State at Virginia, Scott Stadium up there in Charlottesville in the Blue Ridge. It's a gorgeous stadium, by the way. We've all been. That was the first time. It was late in the fourth year of Florida State being in the ACC that they lost a conference game. 1987 to 2000, Florida State, 14 straight years, never finished lower than fourth in the final rankings. Clemson, 1991 to 2011, 20-year cycle, they didn't win the ACC. But you and I talked Friday. Since 1936, when the AP poll came out officially, and prior to that, national championships were given at family reunions by people that liked you. I don't know, whatever. It was crazy. All right. But
the Vandervort National Championship.
That's right. The Scarbinsky Penn State wins again. What a shocker. But anyway.
And shout out to Will with the Pirates hat on.
Hey, go Bucks.
Yes. Roberto Clemente is my all-time favorite player, Will.
Oh, man, my dad's too, man. I could go all day. My family's from Pittsburgh, so I could go all day about the Steelers and Pirates. So, but we won't do that. This is a college.
No. We love baseball. Trust me. We're flanked on the eastern side by Braves country, on the west by Cardinals Nation, in the south by Buddies Rays down in Tampa, St. Pete. All right, so you think about these cycles. This stuff goes in cycles. But you brought out a great series of points. And Roman Harper just texted me. He's on his way to Memphis now. Fired up about him being here tonight to speak to the Touchdown Club. But since 1936, there's only been 7 colleges in America, 50 states, that have won 3 or more national championships. And some schools will say they won more, but Clemson's one of those schools. Mm-hmm. And so is Florida. Of course, certainly is Alabama and now Georgia. But people, 2015, 2016, 2018, 2019, 4 times Clemson played. They won 2, lost 2. Kevin, that's powerful stuff. Again, Kevin, you're of that journalist, mind like Will, I can tell is. You're in the press box. You're an observer. You're like a judge. You have amnesia, but you can't help but get caught up in the emotions. I certainly am.
Some people would say dementia rather than amnesia.
Did you mention Penn State?
Based on my latest column, but that's why I'm excited for that Clemson LSU opener. That game, that's going to tell us a lot, I think. And this is where and I got to push back a little bit about the expansion of the playoff, because maybe it's a good thing that one game lose that first game and you're trying to push a big rock up a steep hill the rest of the year. There's still an element of that, but it's much easier to get in a 12-team playoff, and then certainly if they go to 16, which it appears they will. But I hope we don't lose those games, those really special games early in the year that get everybody fired up as you're sitting here in mid-June and you're looking forward to the first weekend of college football. Teams that don't play all the time. We saw Clemson, Georgia last year. And give Dabo credit. They don't have to play those games. They choose to play those games. They choose to measure their team against the best opponents they can find that will step on the field with them. And so that game, because you've got 2 veteran quarterbacks, you've got 2 teams that I think they can compete for a playoff spot in a conference championship and beyond. So of all the games that opening weekend, and there are a number of really intriguing ones, that one really stands out to me.
How big is it going to be up there? And are you going to wear that Pirates hat? You probably wear that because that makes you look like Mr. Neutral. By the way, Kevin, a suburb of Philly, and he's a Pirates fan. Kevin's a contrarian.
I like the Phillies. I grew up in an hour and a half from Philadelphia, so I'm a Phillies fan, but I also like the Pirates. I know that sounds weird. It's like saying you're an Alabama and Auburn fan, right? But but I was more of a Phillies fan. But I certainly, in my formative years, Roberto Clemente was someone that I really admired, not only as a player but as a person.
Yeah, and also you have to admire him. He what he did, and my dad told me he just loved Roberto Clemente. And when I went, back home a few years ago, I went back up there, and then the first thing I did, I go in the Pirates shop and I buy me a Roberto Clemente jersey, not only for me, but I did it for my dad, just because my dad loved him so much and respected him and what he did as a humanitarian more than a baseball player, and that's the great thing about him. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was, I'm an AM radio junkie. My dad got me the White's radio log as a kid. KDKA, Pittsburgh.
That's what I did too, baby.
Remember Pete Franklin, 3WE in Cleveland, America's first sports talk radio show. Although George Lapidus, longtime writer in Memphis for the Memphis Press-Seminar, said he started sports talk radio on We Radio, 1430 AM in Memphis. The debate goes on. All right.
I will give it to Memphis because I don't like giving Cleveland any credit.
There we go. Hey, all right, look, I'm telling you what, this is an awesome conversation. And Will, I hope you will come back on here with us because you really, in talking to you Friday, you really understand this. I don't think, I see Carrie, it's a two team league. I watched a lot over the weekend of TV when I was in the house, when I wasn't out on my mountain bike or something. ACC, I watched a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Who would want to go play Louisville at night with Browne and what they've got? I don't. Mike Norvell, I watched him at Memphis up close for 4 years. I think that Kevin hit on it. The talent is spread around. I think coaching is at more of a premium ever. It just keeps becoming more of a premium because nobody has the depth they had 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think the ACC, like I said, and I know people like to take shots at it, and I get it, and it is what it is. I think, what you all understand is that people in the SEC love the SEC, and they'll take up for it. People in the ACC don't care. They don't like each other. You never really hear the drum like, oh, go ACC from ACC fans, especially Clemson. Like I said, Clemson feels like they're the redheaded stepchild. They have no love for the University of North Carolina. They just hate them. Yeah. They dislike and hate Duke University.
A lot of people do.
Yeah, they can't stand NC State or their fans. So they're and the other schools feel the same way about Clemson. So nobody carries the flag in the ACC except as an individual. You carry it as if you're that one team. And so for Clemson, it's always like, it's about what Clemson does. They don't really care what the rest of the conference does. But I say all that, but the conference is getting better. I think you mentioned the Georgia Tech game last year. I think it's a prime example of what Brett Key's doing over there at Georgia Tech. And I'm going to tell you, everybody looks at Clemson's schedule and say, oh, Clemson's going to run away with it. I think in week 3, Clemson goes to Atlanta to play Georgia Tech. Yeah. That is a speed bump game for Clemson and what it wants to do. And they have to go there and win. That is not going to be an easy game for Clemson to go win. They got an experienced quarterback with a veteran team, and they got a coach that they will run through a brick wall for. Does that sound familiar? It does to me. Yeah. And those are the teams that are hard to beat. And so that's a dangerous game for Clemson. I think, we don't know what if he can get his girlfriend out of the way. We don't know what Bill Belichick's going to do at North Carolina. He's still one of the greatest coaches, if not the greatest coach in the history of the NFL, that's going to be coaching the Tar Heels this year. You got to think that's going to mean something. Yeah. And that's going to be a speed bump for Clemson, a potential speed bump. You mentioned Louisville. Browne went to Death Valley last year and beat Clemson in Death Valley, the first Louisville coach to do that. Not just beat Clemson in Death Valley, but beat Clemson, period. And so that's another game that's going to be dangerous for Clemson on a Friday night at Louisville. And listen, those guys, they start drinking the bourbon early there on game days. And if they think they got a good football team and a chance to win, that's a pretty intimidating place you can play in. So, it's not going to be easy for Clemson. The conference is getting better. You mentioned Fran Brown and Syracuse. They got the hardest schedule in the country this year. Yeah. But he's a good head coach. I've talked to him many times. And, the guy knows he has a plan. And, he builds his program the way he wants to. He's an SEC coach. Went to coach at Georgia. That's how he learned his ropes, and he's going to do what he needs to do to get them in the position where they can compete every year. And then, of course, you mentioned Miami earlier, and what they got the talent down at Miami. The thing is, can their head coach step away because he's a heck of a recruiter? But can he step away and let his coordinators coach during the game? If he can do that, then Miami has a chance to be pretty darn special too. And I tell you what. I hate to say it because Miami always burns me every year when it comes to ACC voting. You know, and I'm not going to vote them to go to the championship game this year because they burn me so much. But I would not be surprised to see Miami sitting there in early December playing Clemson and Charlotte for the ACC championship.
I won't be surprised at all. Kevin.
Hold on, Rob.
Yeah.
I'm a little disappointed in Will. You went over the Clemson schedule. You left out my undergraduate alma mater in week 2, the Troy Trojans.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, that's a great. I'm glad you brought that up, Kevin, because in Clemson's 2016 national championship run, people forget Deshaun Watson had to lead Clemson from behind in the fourth quarter to beat Troy that year in Death Valley. So, yeah, you're right. That's not going to be a pushover either.
And especially its location on the schedule in between LSU and Georgia Tech, as you mentioned. So maybe that game doesn't get the focus and the attention of the players like other opponents will. And Troy didn't have a great year last year, but that's a program that can be a thorn in the side of a Power 4 program. Ask LSU. They went into Death Valley some years ago and beat the Tigers in the other Death Valley. So they won't be intimidated by the atmosphere. I don't know how good a football team they'll have, but that's a tough. But again, these are the kind of things coaches think about, you know, that when they say, well, no game is easy. And then you look at the schedule and then you start looking at, and it's easy to look ahead, especially if you've got momentum coming off a win over LSU. And then you got a Georgia Tech straight ahead, and maybe you're not as focused when the Trojans come to town.
Well, and that's another
point.
Example. Larry Blakeney won 174 games there in 24 years. Larry, a proud Sigma Nu and roommate with Ralph Jordan Jr., Suge's son at Auburn on 715 West Magnolia. But I think Kevin makes a great – you know what? Y'all all know this. I'm an Auburn grad, but I love all the SEC schools. Vol for life as a wife, oldest daughter, Alabama, 3 Auburn kids. But I'm going to tell you something, man. I love football all over the country and sports because it means something everywhere that you go, wherever you are. And Frank Duffy's texted me. He said, remind that Arkansas fan that was giving my LSU Tigers a bunch of stuff Friday who won that game. I'm like, yeah, Hogs are still in it. LSU still in it. Omaha is huge. 6 different conferences represented, by the way, in Omaha this year. Last year it was 2, ACC, SEC. But let's get in. You know, does anybody that's watching this show right now, and we got a lot of people doing it, and we're blessed to have you. As Chuck always says, blessed beyond what we can count. And let me tell you something. Does anyone out here know what the Textile Bowl is? Will, you don't count. You just have fair.
I was about to say, I do.
You do. Yeah. Does anyone want to type in? Now, obviously, they've got Google, but no Googling. But the Textile Bowl, there's stuff like that up there in the ACC. For both of y'all, and we're down to the last about 5-6 minutes left in this show. And Will, by the way, do it right now so we don't let it forget. And then Kevin also does a show on this channel. Scarbo is he's a part of our team, but let people know right now how they can follow you and keep up with you. And you're definitely on the invite list to come back. This has been fun.
I appreciate that. First of all, they can follow me at Steeler Will on X. Obviously huge Steelers fan.
I love it.
So you can follow our website at Clemson Insider. As well. You can follow Facebook, Clemson Insider, the Clemson Insider on Facebook. And then our website is theclemsoninsider.com. It's a free website, so you can go over there and, read all about Clemson, and especially for the LSU fans, if they want to know what Clemson's bringing back and what they have and things like that. We got a message board over there as well, so feel free to do that. You can also watch me pretty much. I'll do a podcast this week, but now that football season is about to get cranked up, I'll be doing one every week here pretty soon. Our podcast, Believe in Clemson Football. I used to do a show with Levon Kirkland, the great former Clemson linebacker and Pittsburgh Steeler, good friend of mine. But Levon now works for Dabo, so he can't do it with me anymore. So Dabo stole Levon from me. So, but I got another buddy of mine, the Clemson grad, that works with me, and so we talk all things Clemson football and get everybody ready for the game each week as the football season goes along. And so bring in my recruiting guy too at our website. He'll talk some recruiting with us as well. So anyway, there's all the different ways you can find us. And so appreciate you having me on the show, Rob. It's good to be here. Love talking football, man. I don't care what it is. I just love talking college football.
Hey, you got to meet my intern, Oakley McFerrin. He's a rising sophomore at Auburn. Steelers fanatic. I mean, goes all over the country to watch the Steelers.
Same here. I was in Denver last year during the open week. So.
And nothing, Steeler Nation, you're like the deadheads and the spreadheads.
We are. We are.
Memphis has got so many Steelers fans. I think they've passed the Cowboys now. So
we always say this, like I say this anyway, and I've been to Dallas a couple times for the game against the Steelers. Every time I've been, Pittsburgh takes over their stadium. Literally, there's more Steeler fans in Dallas than there are Cowboy fans. And I said, how can you be America's team when you're not even the favorite team in your own stadium with the Steelers? So anyway, I tell you, who doesn't let us take over the stadium? The Philadelphia Eagles do not allow us to take over their stadium. They will not let us in there for nothing, which is good. There's only a couple teams that do that. Last year in Denver, we had 30,000 Steeler fans there. So it's fun. It's fun. I love it.
Yeah, well, it is awesome, man. And look, thank you again for joining us, Will. And we will be having you back on here again in the next few weeks. Need to get you on here because this was very eye-opening, I think, for a lot of people. By the way, the Textile Bowl, for those of you that don't know, is Clemson and North Carolina State. You think about Roger Milliken up there in Spartanburg. Big benefactor of Wofford College, the Terriers. I got a hoodie from there in 6th grade. That's why I've always followed Wofford up in Spartanburg. So anyway, Will, have a great week.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me.
You bet. Kevin, tell them what you're talking about on your podcast. Great one the other day. In this millennium, Auburn is 7-18 versus Georgia. 8 straight losses. But they're 11-14 against Alabama in this millennium. That's got to change. You really got into it. People, go back and watch Kevin talking about that. But we got a couple of minutes. Tell them how they can follow you and keep up with all your great work.
Yeah, they can follow the podcast Scarbo Knows on YouTube. Kevin Scarbinsky _Scarbo Knows. Also, I always link to them, of course, on Twitter. My Twitter account at Kevin Scarbinsky. You can get to it through my website, kevinscarbinsky.com. And, of course, on the SEC Sidelines Sports Network.
Well, you want to learn how to be a true grit journalist? Watch guys like you, Buddy, and all these people we have on the show because it really matters. Hey, look, man, check out all of our sponsors, Sidelines.live, Landers Ford, open every day of the week except Sunday, 7 a.m., 7 p.m. As for Brad Bellamy, the general manager, don't complicate things. Just ask for the man right down the street from Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. Everything you need, indoor, outdoor life, boots, men's and women's clothing. They got it all. Filson, Barber, Duckhead, you name it, they got it. Hewlett and Dunn. And Winter Timber Outdoors, folks, opening a 13,000 square foot store in Auburn first week of August. Hey, man, thanks for watching. Share the show. Watch this channel. We got 8 shows on here, more coming. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Remember what Mother Teresa said. We don't have to do everything, but we can all do something. So go find excuses to win and make life better for everybody around you. You'll win for it. Executive producer Brendan Martin. Good night, John Boy. Good night, Mary Ellen. Thank y'all.